It is time for our next panel discussion. We'll keep it moving. So our next one is co-moderated by Karen Fox, Vice President of Talent at Berkadia, and Angela Bradley, Vice President of Talent at CubeSmart. The topic for this panel is based on some of the newer trends that we're seeing over the last few years, really touching emerging talent and the great reskilling. So if our moderators and panelists could come to the stage.
Hi, everybody. We are going to be talking about emerging talent and the great upskilling. I'm Karen Fox. I'm going to be moderating today. And I actually head up talent acquisition at Berkadia, which is an organization headquartered out in Ambler, PA. We specialize in commercial real estate and finance. So I'm actually going to do this a little bit differently and just give everybody a minute to do some introductions of yourselves, and then we'll get into the panel. How about that? So any takers to go first?
Co-moderator, I guess I'll go. Good morning, everyone. Angela Bradley. I head up talent acquisition at CubeSmart. We are a real estate investment trust that focuses on self-storage, so you might see some of our stores popping up around your area. Prior to CubeSmart, I spent about 10 years at Amerisource Bergen, leading one of their talent acquisition functions. And I'm excited to see everyone today, live and in person. This is great. So good morning. And I also stole Jamil's little tip, and I have my own phone and notes. Going paper-free.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Tim Brown. I'm the head of talent at Peloton. So we are pretty famous for our memes. And, but we're really a digital content company with about 8 million members. How many of you are part of our community? Very cool. Awesome. Happy to geek out on our instructors. I'm also proof that you don't have to fit the instructor mold to work at Peloton. So that's always a little bit fun. This is actually my first in-person networking event since COVID. I walked out the house today and my kids were like, "Why are you dressed so nice?" It's such a low bar, right? But just really excited to talk about emerging talent. It's a really important topic to our business as we continue to grow, and look forward to meeting all of you.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. I am Sarena Tseng, and I am the University and Early Career Talent Acquisition Partner at iCIMS. Any iCIMS clients in here? Woo woo, love that. So if you don't know, iCIMS is a talent cloud company, and we empower organizations to hire talent, to engage candidates, and also to provide the best candidate experience possible in a data-driven approach. I live in Atlanta, and I'm really excited to talk about early career talent because that's what I specialize in.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. So I thought we'd get started by just kind of anchoring to the term emerging talent. So I think we throw that around loosely, and it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Traditionally, emerging talent is when you think early career, right? Someone coming out of a traditional 4-year college, maybe they recently graduated, they have a lot of potential, a lot of motivation, aspiration, there's runway to develop. In today's marketplace, when I hear the term emerging talent, it means so much more. So we kind of want to debate that a little bit with all of you and dig in. But when I say it means a little bit more, think about career transition, right? I'm in the midst of that. I'm only at Berkadia three months. Changing industries, right? I'm a statistic in this pandemic, if you will. Transition could be one thing, and just truly reemergence, right? Maybe you've been out of the workplace for a while, you're getting back in, you still have a long runway. What do organizations need to do to not only find the talent, but develop that talent, keep the talent engaged? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So we wanted to anchor to it's not necessarily just early career. It can mean other things, right? So let's get into it. All right, so first question, let's talk about the attraction side of it. When you think about talent and the availability, well, the limited availability, right? That's one of the challenges. How do we attract those folks that are aspiring, they're motivated, maybe they're in transition, maybe they're re-emerging, maybe they're coming right out of school. How do we get them? Angela, will you take that one first?
Yeah. I think first I always say, it's about building your brand. And I say this selfishly for a company that doesn't necessarily have a huge brand reputation. So it's about skilling your managers around how they're going to build the brand for the company for you. This day and age, I hate to say this in a room full of recruiters, no one wants to talk to us. They want to talk to the hiring managers. So it's about skilling up your hiring managers and how they can become those brand ambassadors. Who do they know in their networks? How do they actually serve up the culture of the company to their communities and their networks to help you to really become more recognized in the things that you do as an organization? And so at CubeSmart, we've really focused on kind of a little bit more of the skilling of hiring leaders and managers that participate in our process to become that brand champion and to be the advocate for the hiring process.
I also wanted to tie in a little bit of what we talked about in the previous conversation around diversity and inclusion and how your company image comes off online. So it's really important to be able to see faces of color on career websites and even on LinkedIn posts. Think about your ERGs. Are you showcasing pictures of those on your LinkedIn company website? Are you being able to demonstrate to people that, we have different types of people at our company and they really enjoy working here? And then when it comes to career sites, another really cool thing is thinking about what are other types of content that you can include on your career website. I like to joke with people that career websites look very generic and stock imagey, and they tend to look very similar across the board. So one thing that you can do to differentiate yourself is, for example, by using employee-generated videos. So at iCIMS, we have this thing called Video Studio, and so an employee can really just take a selfie video of themselves talking about their experience at the company. And this is really just any employee, right, who can do that. And that video gets showcased on the website and really gives candidates this opportunity to get a real sneak peek of what it's like to work at that company.
That's a creative tactic, right? But low budget, I would say, right?
It's really low budget for the employees because they can just use their iPhones to be able to upload those videos.
Yeah, gosh, think about the money we sink into technology and attraction and websites and things like that, and it can be as simple as, and more authentic, right? I guess, Tim, I'll go to you next on the same topic, right, as far as attracting, but what other creative ideas, when you think about your organization, are you deploying to pull the talent in?
Sure. So I think we had an aha moment probably about a year ago where we realized that our EVP was not really crystallized. Mm-hmm. And so we spent a lot of time with our employees really trying to understand what did they see as our value proposition. Is it being part of a high growth company, or is it being part of the fitness industry or technology company? And we really kind of got to the point where we had to crystallize the messaging to why should someone want to actually come join us? Mm-hmm. I have this terrible Monday morning thing where every Monday morning I get 100 resumes of beautiful people that want to be the next Peloton instructor, and I'm like, awesome. But actually that's not who we really hire. Who we really hire are people in our showrooms, in our field operations locations, our call centers, our software developers. And so I think it was really going back to understanding that value proposition. And then I agree with you on the video-based formatting. Unfortunately, I spent $300,000 on that, so I'm kind of jealous now. But we also had the aha moment that our job descriptions suck. I mean, people really don't apply to job descriptions, right? Let's be honest. That's always that fun thing as a recruiter, oh, we're not getting enough applications. Let's tweak the job description. No. And so what we actually have been moving towards is actually video-based job descriptions and really going through simulations and coming back to the DE&I panel, helping people understand why should they actually want the job, but equally, why should you not want the job? We videoed a couple of folks literally installing our treads, which weigh 300 pounds. And it was you know what, if you can't lift 300 pounds, you probably don't want that job. And so from a digital perspective, it's really a combination of understanding your EVP, making sure the content's speaking to your audience, and then building community. And I think sustaining community of talent so that they're at a place where when the right job is available, you have a way to engage them through tools has been really important for us.
Yeah. Karen, actually, I'm going to jump in real quick. One other thing, because you mentioned it a bit, Tim, talked about it on the last panel, is transparency. I think it's important, no matter if you're an emerging talent, a young leader, seeing transparency on what the company culture is like, but also what the hiring process is. There's nothing worse as a candidate to start the process and realize you have 12 more steps to go through and no one told you. Maybe you wouldn't have started. So I think the transparency in the process is really key, and putting that out into the world, into the community, so they see. I can thank iCIMS for that special instruction. We did that when we rebuilt our career site as well, just to see the value for the candidates to understand what they will be involved in and what it will look like for them.
And that's a great point. I mean, it could literally mean on your website, again, this is a low-cost type of thing. We're actually talking about this as a team, too. It just telling candidates what to expect in the process. What does it mean when I'm going to do a phone screen, and what should I expect, and what kind of questions might I be asked, and what happens after that phone screen? Little things like that really do matter, especially for someone that is in transition, re-entering, early career. They're nervous. They're especially nervous because they don't have all the experience. Maybe they're lacking the confidence, that imposter syndrome, if you will. To give some of it away, quote unquote, is okay, because at the end of the day, they have to bring the skill to come. They have to still perform. So great ideas, guys. We'll switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the employer side of things, right? So as employers, how are we upskilling ourselves to make sure that, aside from attracting, let's assume we find people okay, we're able to get them in the door. How do we keep them? This is a different person, right? That might need a little extra. So what can we do to ensure that the person feels welcome, that they're getting the skills they need to be successful? I'll stop there, but Tim, you want to take that one?
Sure. There's a few things that we do that work for us. The first is we actually branded our onboarding experience, and we call it the warm-up. Kind of makes sense, right? And the idea is like helping to ease somebody into the organization and build the competencies and the skills to help them be successful. So if you're coming from a Microsoft stack and we're a Google stack, like let's help you learn those skills and those platforms so that you're not walking into the job feeling like you're already at a delta. And then beginning to like migrate you over several months to get to a point where you really can be successful. The other aha moment is like some of the emerging talent is already at our companies. And are we acknowledging and finding them and helping them discover opportunities? I visit our showrooms all the time just to say hi to the team members and meet them. And I had this aha moment, like, why am I spending $150,000 a year on hiring recruiters when I have these showroom sales associates who are amazing and sell our company for a living? And so we actually launched a development program where we're now training 4 sales associates to become recruiters. And they're thriving and successful. And so I think it's also acknowledging that sometimes our emerging talent, from the perspective, Karen, of retention, are already at our company. They just don't know how to go from this role to that role. And it's working with our learning and development teams, our D&I teams, to develop the infrastructure to help these individuals really transcend their careers and continue to progress.
Sarena, what are your thoughts with iCIMS? I mean, any special, unique tactics there as far as the development and retention, like Tim said, of talent? What are you all doing?
Yeah, for sure. So when it comes to developing, retaining talent, I think, as Tim mentioned, having tools that you can provide, like LinkedIn Learning, to your employees is also really critical. I was talking to one of our talent experience specialists, and she mentioned that Microsoft Office was one of the top searches on LinkedIn Learning. So you can provide tools like that where they can do their own learning, or you can also provide training in-house, having the managers upskill themselves to be able to provide training like that, or even outsource the training as well.
Yeah, Angela.
Yes, I'll jump in as well. One of the things within the CubeSmart world is we really focus on the retention piece more from a development perspective. So what we've done is we've identified what are our feeder pools of talent to other areas of the business. And the business knowledge is so critical within our industry because it's unique and different. So we identify those feeder pools of talent, and then we identify high potentials within those feeder pools of talent and give them specific development opportunities, learning assignments, cross-functional teams that they can participate in. And then when opportunities and roles become available, they're ready for those positions. And we give them, and I also think it's part of the interview process. We call each other teammates at CubeSmart as opposed to employees. And if you have a teammate involved in an interview who is just a bit shy of what's needed for the role, I sometimes argue with the managers to say, give them a shot. If they're 80% there, they have the knowledge. But say they're 70% there, or 60% there. We want to have transparency in our process because we know it helps with the engagement. And so when we think about the emerging internal talent, we want to give them the specific feedback of the one piece of the interview or the skills that are lacking and how they can gain that development. And then we link that feedback to their direct hiring manager. We link feedback back to their current manager and their HR business partner that all can be involved in those dialogues to get them ready for the next time around. Because we know, generally speaking, when somebody doesn't get that internal job promotion or opportunity, you run the risk of losing them. So we really make a dedicated effort and focus to make sure that we can kind of retain them and continue to skill them up.
Angela, I just wanted to dig a little bit more on that because I think that's so critical, having those programs internally to retain. And I know one of the challenges that we're facing, even in my short tenure so far at Berkadia, is getting the message out. And you speak a lot about transparency, whether it be the attraction piece or internally. So can you just help us understand, like, how do you communicate? How do you make sure that people know you might not have the opportunity today to be part of something, whether it be a hosted program, but there is opportunity. And here's how that can happen for you so that people can anchor to something and aspire to it. I think that's half the battle, is the communication of the opportunity internally rather than somebody going outside and looking for it.
Well, let's be clear. The reason we developed this is because we failed at it at one point. So, and I've seen looking at some of my teammates back in the room, and they know. Because we have the internal trajectory for most of our operators out in the field, they want to become a divisional vice president. They want to run a division. That's their goal. And there's only 8 divisions, and we have 90 district managers. So how do you give them that feedback? And so we failed at one point where people weren't getting clear feedback of why they weren't selected. They thought they were ready. The feedback would come from their direct leader. It wouldn't loop in HR. And so we made a concerted effort this year through that process to say, we're all going to sit in a room. We're going to analyze where folks maybe are a bit lacking. How do we then coach their current manager to give the feedback and to understand how they can get involved? How do we then also get the business partners involved to understand how do we loop it back to talent development and the different programs or groups or participation that they need to be involved in to excel in those skill sets? Mm-hmm. And so we made it a 360 process, and we really made sure that HR had a seat at the table to coach and advise, because most managers really suck at giving feedback. They do. They don't want to have those crucial conversations, and so they need us as the partners in HR and talent acquisition to help them with those things.
Great. Any other thoughts on that, you guys?
I'll just build on what you were saying, Angela. So there's a few things that we also identified that were barriers for internal mobility for us. The first is managers don't want their employees to lead their teams, right? Like, don't we love that? So then they just leave the company. So we said, okay, let's just get rid of that. You don't need to go to your manager to get permission to apply for a position. You just go for it. Then we heard from our employees, well, like, oh, that job was posted, but I was on vacation, or I missed the window of opportunity to apply for it, or I wasn't looking internally for a role. So then we got rid of that and said, we'll start just pushing jobs out to our employees based upon competency matching. And yeah, you're not looking for a role, but something pops up in your inbox like, hey, this is a great, awesome opportunity inside the company, another opportunity for retention. Then we heard like, oh, tenure, like you must be in your job for X amount of time. So we actually dropped tenure requirements. And you could be in your job for 2 months and the next dream job pops up. Go for it, apply for it. Now, this didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of selling and convincing and some spikes in turnover to convince our leaders that we needed to change the culture around internal mobility. And then to your point, training managers on how to give feedback. oh my God, brutal. And so we actually started tracking it, and we started to send out EMPS score data to survey our employees through internal mobility to say, how was this process for you? And one thing about leaders, especially executives, is they're very competitive, so that we started actually publishing the data by leader and by department on EMPS scores for internal mobility. And then, that one leader that was at the bottom was like, okay, we need to get our team together and figure out why we suck. And let's sit with my people team, my TA team, let's get some training and some coaching on how we can give feedback so that we can now be able to rise up and be more competitive internally for talent.
Great points. And I just want to say something about the feedback thing too. It is hard, and I think people make it harder than what it has to be. A lot of times internally, as you're keeping people engaged, wanting to provide feedback, just ask the person, how did you think it went? How did you think that interview process went? And listen to them. Let them get it out. Because 9 times out of 10, they understand why they didn't match, and it may not be the right time. And then validate some of what they say and give them some forward-focused input to say, if you do this next time, you'll get there. And that's as simple as it is. I mean, a lot of times I think managers go in, they don't want to do it, they shy away. Then when they go in, they feel like they have to speak right away and just get it all out, and they just blabber or whatever, right? Instead, just take the time. Number one, sit with somebody. You matter. That's part of engagement. Listen to what somebody has to say, validate it, and then give them some positive stuff to go forward with. And it can be as simple as that, right?
I think it's also important to ask your employees, how do you prefer receiving feedback? Some people really enjoy receiving it in a blunt manner and you can just give it to them outright, but other people prefer for it to be a little bit more gentle and to use the sandwich method, which is when you give a compliment and then you give the feedback and then you give a compliment, which I thought I liked at first, but I personally can't stand it anymore because
You don't like sandwiches?
I like regular sandwiches. But the reason I don't like sandwiches is because basically every single time I am hearing positive feedback, I'm anticipating criticism. And you don't want that to happen. You want to always be giving positive feedback to your employees, regardless of whether or not you're going to be giving them constructive criticism.
That's a great point. It's a great point. All right. We'll switch gears again a little bit. But we often hear with emerging talent, traditional emerging talent, that there's a skills gap. I think there's a famous faculty member at Wharton, Peter Capelli, right, does a lot of research around this topic. And I'm just curious from all of you, when you think about specific observations related to skills gap, what are they and what do you do to whether it be counteract or just help folks along so that they can get the skills that they need? So what are the skills that people are usually lacking right out of the gate, and how can we help them? Is there anyone to go with that one?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the biggest skill gaps are when it comes to soft skills. So a lot of emergent talent, they're coming from different industries. So they're coming from healthcare, from hospitality, and maybe even from the military. I know that there are 220,000 people who transition out of the military every year, and when I've worked with hiring managers who work with people from the military, they tend to have a very aggressive approach to the way that they do things. So hiring managers kind of have to course correct in that regard. And just to talk a little bit more about that, let's see. There are, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but.
Okay, Tim's going to help you out.
Let me build on that. So yeah, soft skills, definitely a challenging area. We have a lot of roles in our organization that are customer and member facing. And so building the competencies to be able to have those kinds of discussions is really critical. And Dan will be talking, but we've just struggled to hire enough software developers. We have about 1,000 people in our technology function, and we would have 1,500 tomorrow if we could. And so we're finding that moving out of non-traditional types of programs, like you just don't have to have a bachelor's degree in computer science anymore. One of the things that in a prior life, I used to be the head of tech recruiting at Google, and we realized that we just couldn't hire enough people relying on traditional education. And in fact, some of the talent we were trying to find were just too smart for college. that was actually holding them back. And so we've dropped all education requirements from our job descriptions now. We've moved to equivalency-based, and we're starting to just partner with a lot of organizations to try to find non-traditional talent that can learn basic coding skills and then put them into a safe environment to help them ramp up and be successful. That didn't happen overnight. It took convincing, and it took a long time to fill pattern for some of our core positions to convince leaders to get on board. And now that we've got a traction and a record of seeing some success, it's building the momentum, and they're also just bringing just very contemporary skill sets too. So it is about being flexible in your organization.
Angela, I know.
Yeah, I think my IT recruiter's in the room, and I think this is the area within CubeSmart where candidly we struggle the most, where we as an organization have a lack of what I'll call flexibility when it comes to the hiring process and educating managers and leaders around the fact that it doesn't all come from the resume, right? And it's been great because we've actually brought in some new leaders that are using technical assessments and not necessarily just relying on a resume to see how folks are performing. And we've started to even have conversations with leaders and managers to think about the projects that they're giving our tech teams as more like gig work. Treat them as their gig employees. You're never going to get probably more than 2 years out of the folks that you bring into the IT organization, specifically in app dev and software engineering. And so the types of projects and engagements that we put them on internally should be 6-month stints to keep them engaged, get the best out of them. And so it's been a conversation around how do we then, and that's just to pivot to the actual question, how do we then look at some of the folks that we have on board today and get them involved in some of those projects? So we're making some shifts in terms of training up folks that are on the help desk to become application developers, and they're troubleshooting some of the systems and they're learning the ins and outs of it and pairing them with leaders and mentors. Now, granted, this has happened like twice, right? But twice is better than nothing. So we're trying, but I would say it's probably the one area where that we continue to struggle with the flexibility from leaders.
Yeah, I think the gig work idea is really unique, and that reminds me, I have one person on my team right now. She's worked at the company for 10 years in talent acquisition, but she's currently doing rotations right now. So she has a 3-month rotation in the customer success team. And so I think in that role, she's kind of functioning like a consultant. And sometimes you only need someone really for 3 months. So that can be something to consider as well.
I think they're all great inputs, and in general, when you think about skills gaps, I think it's fair to say, and I'm trying to remember, I saw something that LinkedIn, they did some sort of research study, and they looked at the different generations, and you think Gen Z, they have really strong hard skills, highly flexible, willing to work on the weekends. There is no 9 to 5, right? And then you look more at the Gen X or the boomers, and they have the soft skills, but they think Monday through Friday box, like 9 to 5, right? So when you think about traditional emerging talent, we might have to help them with some of the soft skills, right? Because they're so strong on the hard skill side of things. And when I say soft skills, it's just being in person, interacting, some of the social, the presentation skills, communication skills. Because when you're behind a screen and technology is your strength, you just may not have that, right? So simple things like that organizations can be thinking about to upskill.
Yeah, can I add one thing on that? So
Sure.
I think professionalism is a huge thing as well. People have all sorts of different standards of dress code and things like that. And iCIMS did a recent class of COVID-19 report recently, and we surveyed graduates from the classes of 2020, 2021, and 2022, and actually found that 1/3 of recent graduates feel like what they wear to work does not matter at all. And for a lot of companies, that won't fly, unfortunately. And so, hiring professionals even say that when they're hiring this talent, one of the top reasons why candidates are losing out on roles is because they don't have a professional appearance when they're showing up to interviews. So companies they should be setting that expectation of what professionalism standards mean in their particular workspace.
I'll share. Go ahead.
Just building on that, yeah, we actually found out that we had to tell candidates like what bring your best self to the interview process actually meant. We had individuals that were on Zoom and in person wearing a suit and tie, and managers were like, oh, they're not going to be a good fit for the culture. And we're like, well, it's kind of an interview. Yeah. And then, conversely, we've had to go the other direction and be like, just wear a clean t-shirt to work. Like, that's all we're asking for, right? But like, just setting that expectation up front and training the recruiters to actually like bias bust a little bit and tell the candidates like, yeah, feel free to just be you. And here's what being you means. And it just helps everyone just be more comfortable and set aside those affect things and instead just focus on being able to bring their best self to the interview process.
And I'll share that similarly. In fact, next week, folks from my team are training some of our new interns that have just joined on professional business etiquette, right? What is expected of them in their summer experience? Many of them, this is their first internship. We tend to hire folks that are rising juniors, so this is their first experience in kind of a professional work environment. And managers get frustrated because they're like, oh, they're not dressed properly, or they show up to their teams meeting with a ripped t-shirt. It's like, well, we have to tell them those things. They don't know. So we can't assume that they're going to understand it. And we've actually seen that it's worked really well. It's something as simple as, please show up on time and don't sit in your bed and take the meeting, which happened last summer. I'll never forget that one. So it's little things like that, but it's also the reskilling of the managers and how they need to be equipped to have those conversations with their teams. We've done a lot with reskilling managers when it comes to hiring and selection and what their role in the process is, because it's not just on the candidate side anymore and on HR.
Yeah, great points. We have 1 minute to wrap up. So how about we just go down the row, and if you had one bit of wisdom or a comment around the value of emerging talent as you see it, what would that be for the group? Whoever's comfortable going, oh, this is a curveball. We didn't prepare for this one.
I would say data. Like show up to your kickoff meetings, your leadership meetings with data. Like talk about availability metrics, talk about applicant pipelines. I'm not sure if anybody here uses Seekout. We use it for affirmative sourcing. It uses permutation algorithms that show you like literally micro availability. But when you can show up with business leaders and say, if you're going to specifically want to hire only in New York City, this is the availability of your market. If you're willing to open up to X markets, I can get you 3 times the diversity, or this type of talent pipeline, but like you gotta show up with data. And then since I still have my microphone, I'm hiring for recruiters. So if you're looking for a job, come see me.
Any bit of wisdom?
I'll share. You guys talked about it in the last panel, which I appreciated, is to not have the fear of giving your input back to the hiring managers. I always say, just tell them. Just tell them. It's just advice. They don't have to take our advice. And when they fail, you can tell them they failed, and then they'll actually listen to us. But not saying anything at all, we're doing ourselves a disservice. So I think whatever, whether it's diversity, whether it's around reskilling, it's just having that conversation with your leaders and giving your input as the expert. And it's okay if they don't listen to you. They might next time.
Yeah.
I think one important characteristic of emergent talent is that they really care about mental health. And a lot of managers don't really know how to have that conversation with their employees, and a lot of upskilling, a lot of skills they have to learn. So, that means just going beyond the how are you question and asking about boundaries and burnout, and, encouraging your employees to take PTO by setting that example and not checking your work email during vacation. And 43% of recent grads, they expect to have those open conversations about mental health with their managers.
Well, join me in thanking this esteemed group of panelists. Some great insights. I'll pass it on. Thank you, guys.